Hello, my name's Philippa Waller.
My name is Penelope Waller, and we are two of the directors at 4D Human Being.
And welcome to the 4D Human Being podcast. What's it all about, Pen?
It's all about your personal and professional relationships. It's about your communication skills, how you lead, how you work and build teams, how you are looking after yourself and your well-being, and how you are much more at choice. What do we mean by that?
Well, sometimes we can get a little caught in patterns in life and we can all be a little bit on our automatic pilot. So 4D Human Being is all about helping us get back to choice and being a four-dimensional human being. And your fourth dimension, of course,
is intention. So whether it's about your impact, your leadership style, your team dynamics, whether it's about your well-being, whether it's about your communication or your presentation skills, anything that involves human beings interacting with other human beings, 4D Human Being are here to help.
we're going to take a deep dive and look at some tools, insights, theories that are going to help you go from a 3D human doing to a 4D human being so that you can happen to the world rather than the world simply happening to you. And recording.
It's hot, isn't it, Philly?
It's hot, close, about to break. I think we've all felt like that.
I was going to turn my phone off. I've got more messages coming in on the wire.
So I just want to say something.
Go on.
I'm loving the Olympics.
Oh,
we love the Olympics.
Do you know, and lots of people do say this, and I've got friends who are out in the Olympics watching the most random sports. I've just been watching the dressage.
Now, this is it.
Now, who knew?
Who knew?
How amazing dressage could be. I love anything.
As you said, I mean, I saw the pistol finals this morning between Hungary, France and Korea, I think it was.
Right.
And it was the women. And you kind of go, I mean, they are shooting at like 25 yards, 25 metres.
Yeah.
The
They
size
could take
of
you
like
down.
a teacup. And unlike all the other sports where you've got a lot of movement, you've got this dead, still, glassy, l'assassin.
Yeah, well, I've always said to you, if I was going to take up an Olympic sport, if you have 4 years to train for Olympic gold, I think shooting would be the
And honestly, I was looking at them thinking, and they're so safe with the guns, obviously, like uber cautious, and they're not allowed to celebrate even winning gold until they've put that pistol down and take it out and unload it or whatever.
Waving the gun.
Waving the gun around, exactly. Like, seriously. But I was thinking, I mean, these amazing women, if you were in their sight line, it's over.
No, fair enough.
It's over.
Fair enough.
I mean,
they are the assassins.
They are the assassins. Anyway, so what I love is that you suddenly find yourself sort of walking along, watching canoeing or pistol shooting.
Kayaking, canoeing, rowing.
I just love it. Anyway,
the pole vault today. I mean,
don't tell me. It's I'm on catch up because I've been dancing.
Yeah,
at an Olympic level, obviously. Sure. So I want to talk about something I just saw on the Olympics. They're just leading into the men's pommel horse. Again, words you don't say for the rest of the year. Never use the word pommel horse.
Max Whitlock.
Up
for a third gold.
He's the British. He's in the gymnastic team. He's up for the pommel horse. He's sort of come back, having said he's not going to. I mean, there's so much. They've done a little, leading.
I never watched pommel horse.
Yeah, what exactly?
Except every 4 years, and I go nuts for it.
Exactly, and then you go nuts for it, and you just can't believe that someone can hold themselves up with that strength. I know. So, but he nearly gave up after Tokyo, and then he came back. But what struck me, they did a little piece on him on the BBC as we're leading into the pommel horse final. Again, words you've got to say at the moment because you won't say them again for another year.
Yeah.
Well, 4 years, unless you do the World Championships, 2 years. But Max Whitlock was just talking about after Tokyo, he won the gold, and it was tough because, of course, we were in COVID and nobody could go and all of that. And he got home and he said he just fell into a real low. He sort of sat on his bed. He felt completely pointless. He felt worthless. He had this, the inner critic just completely took over. And what really struck me about that, and what feels really important to say, is that it does not matter, and we sort of know this, but we don't know this. It does not matter how much success you've had in your career,
who you are, what level you're at,
what choice you've made about the path that you take, the interest that you have, what level you feel you should or would or want to achieve. You could literally, and I use that word mindfully, have won 3 golds.
Yeah.
And you can still have those moments. And it just feels like, it's not that I think we should all be talking endlessly about the low points of life, but I do think we can learn to share and unite.
Totally.
And feel like, actually, this is also what connects us.
Yeah.
Whereas I think we can be a bit like feeling like we only belong and we only have value if we're holding the trophy, and everybody is saying, oh my goodness, you're amazing. And it was such a good reminder that we all share this roller coaster.
Totally. And this inner narrative has been a real theme of my coaching. I mean, it always is, but over the last couple of weeks, it's particularly been a theme in my coaching. Because like you say, it almost doesn't matter who you are, what you achieve, how well you think you've done versus what you should do. You are living with your inner voice.
Yeah.
And if you feel you can't or you haven't taken time to get familiar with that voice, understand that voice, it will be there in quite often negative forms a lot. Regardless of what you've achieved and who you are. So it's so interesting, and I talk about this a lot with coaching clients, that I think sometimes we can look up in terms of the achievers or the seniority up here and think, well, you know, when I'm up there, the voice will be different.
Yeah,
and it's not unless you do the work.
Yes, and to add to that, not only can we look up to others who've I don't know, written 20 books or have won the gold on the pommel horse. I'm just going to keep saying that word, but we also look towards what this fantasy of where we think we should be, and actually we need to spend
and the experience will then be different,
and then will be different. And it's, you know, we've said this before, it's Matt Damon and Ben Affleck winning the Oscar, sat at the coffee table going, why don't we feel different? Like, and I felt that in bereavement, in grief. You go, why isn't the world
stopping?
Why isn't the world stopping? because that's what it is, because it's moment to moment. So it's a real lesson to be in the present moment, but it's also, there's 2 other bits to it. One is, and I'm heading for a super segue here, Laura. One is just occasionally to glance back to the past and go, oh my goodness, look where I've got. And that was very useful for me today in Quick Step, let me tell you. Because
looking forward to seeing any videos.
Well, you know, let's see if we're going to actually commit that to celluloid or digital now. Of course, we're in the 2020s. But you know, it's a good every now and then, because I know where I want to get to. Obviously, World Championship, but
sure.
Oldest ever. But it is really useful to look back and go, oh my goodness, like this has come a long way. The other thing, again, if we loop back to Max Whitlock, one of the things that helped him out of that deep, dark hole that he went into for a while was to set a new intention. And intention is not about achievement. Intention is about a path, a choice that you can take one tiny step on that will feel different to, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know, I have no value, I've got no purpose. And actually your intention doesn't have to be a gold medal. Your intention can be, I'm going to be a bit more thoughtful today, or I'm going to be a bit more playful. I mean, that is as much an intention, but you've already set yourself on a path
that's going to be different.
That's going to change. That's going to change your experience, isn't it? So we're talking today the last 2 lessons in leadership from A Silent Retreat: intention and story. So the last 2 today, intention and story.
And intention goes to the absolute core of everything that we do. You can boil it all the way down to intention. And I actually think sometimes we underestimate the power of intention and the power of our core model. Sometimes I go into workshops, and I was coaching one-to-one recently with a client, and had loads of tools that I gave to this person. And at the end of the day, I said, "What's really been useful? What are you really going to take away?" He went, "The idea of a conscious intention." And I thought it's so interesting, because we talk about it so much. It's so obvious to us in terms of a concept. Not saying we do it all of the time, because it's not easy, but the fact that was such a key learning, and that it was a real reminder to me that a lot of the time we are going in either without an intention or with an unconscious intention. And it's huge.
It's huge. I had the same thing years and years ago when we first started. I was in Switzerland, went into the bathroom at the break, and I went into one of the cubicles, and the 2 participants came in and started talking. I was like, oh no, I'm in that awful situation.
They don't know I'm here.
They don't know I'm here. They could say absolutely anything. And all they were talking about was, oh my goodness, I just hadn't thought about the setting an intention. Yeah. And of course, from there, everything changes. What was so wonderful about being on the retreat was, and I came back and I said to you, and I think you said to me, oh, good, I wasn't sure if you were going to go and live in a cave for the rest of your life.
I did. Well, I didn't know what was going to happen on that retreat because I couldn't speak to you for 10 days.
But actually what happened was, every day we had a lesson, sort of like a little movie, a film at the end of every day. And actually what got really even more solidified was the connection for me to that core part of the 4D work. I mean, the fourth dimension is the intentional dimension: physical, emotional, intellectual, intentional. And it was a huge part, obviously, of the Vipassana meditation practice of Buddhism, that who you are in your life does not start with action, and neither does it start actually with communication. It starts with intention. And that's exactly our model. We are behaviour driven. What's really interesting is that we are behaviour driven. We give people tools that they can click a finger, they can walk out of that room, they can walk into another room, presentation or a massive conference, and they can make a different impact instantly, absolutely instantly. Even people who don't think they're great presenters or communicators, or is they're new to leadership. But what's really interesting, and we know that about ourselves, and we would talk about ourselves as being in the line of communication. Yeah. So those are the second two: action and communication. But our work is absolutely rooted in exactly in the same as Buddhism. Is it absolutely comes from intention.
Yeah. What sits behind.
And here's a sort of sticky way to remember it, which slightly goes to our second theme of story, is that if you think about the action of, this is rather dark, but slitting open a stomach with a knife.
Crikey.
I know, but this is the one that they used. That action, that is the action. But that action can have really, really different meanings and impact based on the intention. And a surgeon who cuts open your belly, the intention is to help you, heal you, to cure you. Yeah. Whereas a mugger or somebody who attacks you is to harm you and to hurt you. Yeah. So it's all about the intention. It's not all, my stomach was cut open with a knife, because actually
you don't know what's behind that.
So it's all about intention. So, we hear it, don't we, in communication. Well, I only said this, or, well, actually what I did was this. And the action and the words do not necessarily communicate the intention. And the reason that somebody maybe have complained is not about the action. You put your book down on the table. It was the intention behind it, which was dismissive or disrespectful or blaming.
And maybe I'm going to preempt your super segue now. But,
no, I've done my super segue.
You've done a super segue.
It's over. If you missed it, it was a subtle super segue.
It was very subtle. So my question would be, what particularly on your silent retreat made you think about intention as one of your 5 lessons?
Well, one of them was absolutely that narrative. But the other one was also, I think there's so many applications for intention. Because one of them, of course, was what we've talked about before, that we can see somebody's behaviour but without knowing the intention, which is harder when you can't communicate. You have to work a bit harder with non-verbal communication. So understanding somebody's intention, which of course we can be explicit about.
Yes, and caring enough to take the time to understand someone's intention.
Absolutely.
I mean, think about what the world would be like if we all did that before we jumped in.
Exactly. So,
and we want people to do that to us.
Absolutely. So all of these 5 lessons tie in so beautifully, because our egos got triggered, we've made assumptions, because they made a certain impact. But here we are at lesson 4. If we check their intention, or even expand our thinking into what could their intention have been. If we use the ego work, can we get curious and ask them what their intention was?
Yeah. Or exactly like you said just before, we're not often brilliant at explicitly stating our intention because we just assume people must know because it's so obvious to me. That's what's in my head. Sometimes it's really good to go into a meeting, maybe a tough meeting, say, look, my intention here is this.
Absolutely.
If the impact is not that, please know that my intention... we just don't say it enough.
Absolutely. So exactly.
And the gap between our intention and our impact is really where the 4D work comes in.
Exactly. And if you think about, a feedback session, you know that you've screwed up a bit, or you know that something's gone wrong, or you've fallen short. You've got this meeting in the diary. Ooh, can you come to my office at? Going to be like, they're going to criticise me, or they're going to say this. Yeah. So already you are you're building up this narrative. You're probably very nervous. You know what they're going to say,
assuming what their intention is.
Well, assuming what it's going to be like. But even as the person giving the feedback, you're probably really nervous, maybe a bit annoyed.
Yeah.
You're prepping it,
thinking maybe the other person was deliberately not.
Or maybe they're going to come in aggressively, or whatever it is. So. You've already got all of this stuff swimming about. Now, how different to walk in there and for the person to say, for your boss to say, or whoever it is to say, right, I want to talk about what happened on Tuesday last week in that meeting. So, clearly things went wrong. We didn't hit right. Already, you're going.
Yeah.
Imagine if they sat down and said, John, right from the outset,
you're brilliant.
Your work has been so great. My intention for today is to really understand what happened there and how we can support you and projects moving forward to make sure that we can,
communicate or impact or deliver the results.
Yeah, to make sure that actually we don't put you or anybody else in this situation again. Yeah. So that's, I want to meet you there. I want to work out what happened, what you need, what I need, and let's work together in the spirit of collaboration. So I'm right with you. Yeah. You go, okay, well, I can have that conversation. Yeah, exactly. That's a conversation I can have. Yeah. So intention is different from emotion because it doesn't mean that let's call her Angela. She's irritated with John, because she lost a lot of money, let's say, in the team. So it's not to say there isn't emotion there.
It's just, are they driving the bus when perhaps they don't need to be driving the bus?
And there might be a good question. Does John need to know that actually when it happened, John, I was really annoyed? Maybe, but maybe not. No. Maybe not. No. I mean, maybe that's just clear. Like, no one was going, yay, we screwed up.
Well, John can't necessarily control Angela's emotion and vice versa. So, you're not really in control of other people's emotion. I think we very often think that it's other people's fault that we feel emotions. We'll say, they made me feel like that. And actually, that's not really true. I mean, there's a small truth to it, in as much as their behaviour will have triggered a pattern in you, which will then have led to you making assumptions about things. But you are generating your own emotions. So to say that someone else is making you feel a certain way is not true. So therefore, to then give them your emotions, they had no control over that, even though you may think they did. They didn't. And B, it's not necessarily the most helpful thing in order to get where you want to get to. Now, I'm not saying never say that was really challenging for me emotionally, because then we can talk about what behaviours are going to work better. But it's not always the best place to start.
And also that language is so different.
Yeah.
What you're annoying. Yeah, you're annoying. So exactly. Firstly, judgment. You're annoying, and second, or you made me feel angry for the whole weekend.
Yeah.
It was your fault that I lost my way. Because it's just not true.
I'm not saying I never say you're annoying to anybody.
But actually, in that moment, I found you annoying. Or, I felt very, irritated, and I want to really get to the bottom of what happened.
Or what I know about myself. Yeah. When things like that happen.
It can really,
you pull it back to the self.
Yeah, once I'm locked into something, when I'm in a certain mood and I'm locked into something, I cannot let it go. I'm like a terrier. Now, what's great about that is we are going to sort this out.
And so fine, if you articulate it in that way, fine. And own it. And remember that the emotions aren't necessarily the most helpful part of you to be driving the bus in challenging situations. Go back to intention. So I can imagine on the silent retreat, as an example, I can imagine that you might be quite tired, you might have moments where you feel like it's tough, and if emotions are driving the show, some things might happen, such as, I don't want to be here anymore, or I'm just I'm going to tell somebody that they're annoying me. Whereas if intention's driving it, right, I'm here to really understand myself, that is going to be a very different response. Not easy, but nevertheless.
100%. So what I love about what you just said, so 2 things on that. One is, and I'm going to go back to the bus driving analogy because I absolutely love it. And I said it yesterday in a meeting with someone I'm going to work with. And it's because it's so sticky, because we've all got an image. Mine's always the American yellow school bus, but we've all got an image of the bus, haven't we? And what I love about it is it's so wonderful. It's so integrating, because we're saying everyone's staying on the bus.
Yes, all valid.
All valid. All your parts get to stay on the bus.
Yeah.
What's great about it, though, is furious, if you imagine the emoticon, furious, sort of red-faced, screaming part of you that just hates John right now. They get to stay on the bus.
Yeah, they just don't get to drive.
They don't get to drive. But more than that, they get to sit halfway back with a Twix and a sandwich.
Yeah.
Other chocolate bars
and
are
they
available.
can watch someone else take charge.
And they can watch someone else take charge, and they can still be sitting there going, I'm still really cross, but this chocolate tastes good. Because you've taken care of them. You said
things seem to be working out.
Yeah, she's dealing with it. I'm just going to sit here and be cross, because what she needs to know is this isn't okay.
Yeah.
And so they're messengers, but you sometimes want your messengers to just pipe it down a bit.
Give the message and then
go and fume over there with your chocolate and your snacks, and look at the view, and I'll drive you somewhere better. You'll feel better, and we'll all, it's the right route to take. Yeah. But they are good messengers, but they're not usually good drivers.
Not usually. I mean, I can imagine if we're in a
Joy can drive sometimes.
Yeah, I imagine if you're in a really, really sort of life and death situation, then they pop anger in the driver's
seat. Walking down the street, pop your keys between your fingers and go. Absolutely.
But often, I think anger gets in the driving seat a little too much. Anger gets fear or whatever.
Well, exactly. And I think this is what's so relevant about intention. And it is the evolution of consciousness. We are not on the savannah being chased by tigers and all of those things, those cliches that we use. But, those much more primal, the reptilian brain, the limbic system, we've evolved, and they were useful, really, really useful. But they're just less useful when we're talking to Bob in accounts about the fact that we can't get our expenses through, because he's not gonna kill us with a rock.
Sure. I do think one of these days we're going to have to do a podcast where Bob is the hero of our story.
I know, poor Bob. I know, it's always Bob. It's such a good name. But the other thing about intention, which I also love, which came out of the retreat, was that at the moment where I went to speak to one of the teachers, and it was near the end. It was the Friday, so it was the last day before silence was lifted. And I was really struggling. We had this practice where you sort of do a body scan, and I just felt like concrete. And I couldn't. It was a weird thing. I just couldn't do it. I was sort of I'd got stuck somehow. I don't know how else to describe it. And then I was sort of sitting there, and then I became aware that I'd got myself into a sort of, I'm not a great meditator. The ego.
This is just annoying.
This is just annoying. All that nonsense. And I went and talked to the teacher. And in fact, I talked to her after I got back, because it was difficult to keep up the practice. So there were 2 times when I was struggling, and I talked to her, and both times she reminded me, do not underestimate your intention to come on a 10-day retreat and to try to do this. And then when I was back at home, I want to remind you that the fact that you're on the phone to me and you've called me, which they're very open to, she said, really, really tells me about your intention to stay with this and keep doing it. And it's in a way, it's so simple. It's not that it's not rocket science in that way, but we are so caught on achievement and success and being great at things, and we just don't give ourselves enough awards or certificates for setting good intentions.
I was just thinking when you were saying that, even thinking about, I was talking to a client recently about they wanted to do a meeting to celebrate the team and what had been going on in the year, and it was kind of difficult. It's been a challenging year, and I said to her, could you celebrate how the team have been, how they've chosen to show up? And exactly as you said, really the biggest prizes in life, when you get to the end of life, really the biggest prizes in life should be the intention you had to other human beings throughout that life, rather than what you've achieved. Now, not to say that all the wonderful Olympic achievements are not absolutely incredible, but boy, they had an intention behind them. I mean, boy,
it's like,
how strong were they?
the Olympic Games are, 0.0 whatever percent of their time.
Yeah.
Everything else is the intention. And the intention is driving the getting up at 4 a.m. and the going to the gym.
Otherwise it would be, I'm a bit tired.
If you let emotion drive the bus, then you'd never get up. You just order some more toast.
There'd be no goals.
Exactly. It's all about, it's so true. Intention. And also, I just want to say on that, well-being wise and really being humane and, honest with ourselves and, oh goodness, let's be human. We don't all have to set the intention of being the best in the world.
Sure.
And actually, this is the tip that I want to give that I find really, really helpful. The mission statements that companies have. Yeah. They'll have like 3 to 5 value words. Penelope Waller Limited can also have 3 words, and it is such a good way to bring it right back to your present moment, to your day. You wake up in the morning, you're a bit tired, or you don't want to go to the gym.
Yeah.
What are your 3 words? So something like creative, connecting, and kind.
Yeah.
It has to alliterate, by the way. No, it doesn't really. But your 3 mission words. Now, you could pick all 3 of those or one of those, or you could say, right, I'm going to have an intention on each of them today. So I'm going to do one creative thing, and that might be, I'm going to, write a post, or I'm going to bake a cake.
Or you're going to make a peacock chicken.
Or I'm going to make
out of a paper plate.
Which I did yesterday with your lovely youngest daughter. We did crafting. Or I'm just going to check in connected. I'm just going to check in with my neighbour. I'm just going to drop her a WhatsApp or a text. And then kind.
Yeah.
I'm going to appreciate a friend. Done. You've done 3 really intentional things that are about, exactly as you said, Pen, how you want to be.
And actually, in terms of the well-being piece, I found intentionality today very useful. I mean, I am somebody who does tend to pack out their diary slightly.
Yeah.
Both because I work and I've got kids and there's lots of travel involved in my life, both personally and professionally. This morning was the first morning in quite a long time where there hasn't been like some crazy agenda going on. And I woke up this morning and I did initially think of all of the things that I've got to get done today, like admin-wise. And then I thought, just for once, I'm going to set the intention that I don't actually have to do anything.
Oh, how nice!
And then anything I did do was an absolute bonus. So for those of us who feel like, the objective in life is to get as much done as possible, just occasionally set the intention. Today, my intention is to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
It's can be so brilliant for your well-being just occasionally to do that.
Well, and if we
own it.
Yeah, own it. And if we integrate the bus analogy with that, there's a really nice practice there to exactly as you say, occasionally my intention is to really do nothing particularly constructive today, and I'm going to pop in the back of the bus with a chocolate bar the voice that wants to go, well, if you don't do anything, you're worthless, and just pop them in the back and go, well, I'm gonna drive today. I can hear you saying that, but the thing is, we're gonna meander along this road and just see.
That's right.
But don't let that voice drive.
Well, that voice did pop up in my head today, but I was able to say yes. But my intention today was to not do very much.
That's right.
So I'm going to get to the end of the day and go, I served my intention.
Well, what a nice tick! That is such a sneaky win over that voice, isn't it? Well, hang on a minute. It's like it's a conundrum.
Because then I won't do my intention.
But I'm not going to achieve my intention if I do what you want me to do. And also, you get to drive often enough, Mrs. Schedule.
Exactly.
Yeah, love it. So, what are your 3 kind of, and these can move much more than a company mission statement can, because we have to all gather around that. We can't keep changing it. But what are your 3 sort of, Penelope Waller or Bob, whoever you are, Limited, mission statements or words?
You're making me think of my new hashtag, Phil.
But I love it. Exactly. What would Penelope do?
What would Penelope do?
WWPD.
Hashtag.
But I've really been using this a lot, and if I wake up in the morning and I think, I've got schedule, diary, I immediately go, I'm going to do one creative thing, one kind thing, and one connected thing today. And if I do that,
it's enough.
I've done enough in terms of my intention towards myself. Love it.
And in fact, I've been talking to Matt, our colleague, about this recently over the past few days, and we may do another podcast on this later down the line, because he's been doing a lot of reading around chronic stress.
Yeah.
which is not the same as acute stress. Chronic stress can really go unnoticed. You don't really know it's happening to you. And very often it's because there's an unconscious intention in your head about how much you've got to get done during the day.
Yeah.
So we might talk about that another time. But overriding that with a really conscious intention sometimes around self-care, being kind, being creative, not doing very much can be really, really helpful. As can setting a really busy and positive intention.
That's right.
On other days, even if you're feeling tired, stressed, annoyed about things. What's the underlying intention that you want for that day?
Well, that's the thing about intention, I think, that's probably really key to remember, is intention is not the same as we have to be going 24/7 to be the best at whatever. That's not the same. No. Intention is much more flexible.
It's more about process than
exactly.
end goal, isn't it?
It's much more about, right, we're going to go 2 hours hell for leather on this, and then
see where we are.
And then I'm going to take a break. Intention is
not if we don't win this, we're terrible.
Intention is much more awake to what's needed in the moment, and serving you. Woo!
That was the fourth one.
And now we're going to talk about story. I mean,
I think this is one of your favourite things on your retreat.
Yeah, the stories were so sticky, and also I think it was stories that came up about the practice, and I've mentioned the one in the article that's accompanying this podcast, which was, again, just really sticky. As somebody who, I mean, many of us are, very open to absorbing energy, and particularly the work that we do. And the story around that really stuck for me was when somebody was really angry with the Buddha and it was ranting out because he'd taken away.
Oh, this is a story that
it was an actual story that they told. Yeah. We'll come on to what happens for your own stories in your head, but stories that were told because after 240 hours on a meditation retreat with something like, almost 200, 196 hours awake, and a crazy number of meditation hours. How do I remember that practice? What do I remember about that whole 10 days? And in the evening you get sort of 45-minute, 1 hour talk on video, and within that there's a few stories, and it's the stories that stick in all those hours. It's the stories that stick. And this story was about the Buddha. So someone was really annoyed with the Buddha because he'd taken away so many of his sort of congregation, if you like. He'd drawn a lot of people towards learning his meditation practice, and other people who had other sort of gatherings felt like, well, hang on a minute, where are my people going? So he was raging about the fact that the Buddha was so popular. I was so angry, I'm going to go and give Buddha a piece of my mind. And he went up to the Buddha and he's ranting and raving. And the Buddha very simply told him a story. He said, do you ever go to someone's house with a gift? And he said, and the man was confused because he was busy shouting, and he went, well, yes, of course I do. He said, well, what would happen if you went there and you took your gift, but the person whose house you went to, who had invited you there, didn't want your gift? Well, I wouldn't be able to give it to them. So who would own that gift now? He said, well, I suppose I'd still own it. Ah, yes. Well, for me, that's your anger. That you want to give me the gift of your anger, but I don't want it, so I'm going to leave it with you. And a story can be as simple as that, because that's different from an intellectual communication about, well, we need to think about not passing our anger on. So and just in that moment I was like, you think about it like a gift that actually you choose not to have, and you can keep that gift because today that's not going to work for me.
And this is true of the more than a decade that I've done this work. You've done it for even more than that. If I think about all the delegates that I've met a lot of delegates over the years, and it's the individuals that get up and tell a really impactful story about their lives, which are the ones that you remember.
Oh my goodness!
And we talk about this so much in our presentation skills, communication and storytelling workshops. Our brains are wired to connect with story, to remember emotive messages. And if we don't put them in, it's just hard. It's not that we can't remember something, it's just so much harder. And the stories that you've come away with from the retreat are the things that are sticking.
Yeah. If you're not using story in your day-to-day as a leader, as a team member or as a business, then you are absolutely missing a trick. I'm going to tell one more on that. It was very early on when I started this work. I was assisting, I was learning the ropes of working in leadership, facilitation and training, and was working with a group on business impact, business narrative and impact, and he was talking about the business that he'd set up. You better let your dog in,
let him in
because he's making an impact,
I don't know if I dare move.
He has set an intention, that dog, to come into this office.
There he is.
And, you can achieve what... If you set an intention, you can achieve it. So
he was scraping at the window.
So I was working with this group, and this gentleman had set up a business in extreme sports, taking groups on extreme sort of winter sports. He was telling me about his organisation, and I thought, that's interesting. And then in a break, I asked him how he got into it. And he said, what happened was, he said, I was living my life, he said, and then I went on this ski trip. And he said, I was caught in an avalanche. And he said, and this snow was just absolutely just piling past me. He said, and suddenly I was in this white, I was in a whiteout, as it were. And he said, all that went through my mind was sort of pints of beer and a sort of job that I didn't really enjoy. And I just remember him talking about the pints of beer, but he said, and I just was there thinking, what's going through my mind is sort of quite banal things. Yeah. And he said, and it was that moment I was just like, what is my life like? What is going through my mind here? Like nothing inspired, nothing particularly, nothing that grabs me. And I'm in an avalanche, and I think I might die. And he said, and luckily I survived. And he said, and I came out of it, and I was like, I'm going to do something different in my life, and I'm going to offer to other people the experience of, you know what, you can do anything you want. He said, so I set up this business of like extreme sports where you can take people on and hopefully not get stuck in an avalanche. But I was like, that's your website narrative. Yeah. Like, the time I was stuck in an avalanche changed my life. You want to change yours? Let's go. We'll go snowboarding. And I was like, that's the story. Yeah. It's not like, I got some investment and I built a website and, let's get you a schedule to go to, Austria. It's like...
And I think sometimes we can think, well, everyone's got a story, or maybe they're not interested in my story, or... going back to the story you heard about the anger, it's not the most dramatic story in the world, but it's crafted as a story in order to make it sticky, meaningful, emotional, connected.
Yes.
And similarly, I mean, actually, an avalanche is pretty dramatic, to be fair, but it doesn't have to be a massive story.
No, it really doesn't.
If you have got a story like that, why wouldn't you put it on the front page of your website? But it doesn't have to be massive.
It really doesn't. I remember that idea of giving gifts or not taking a gift. If I'm in a conversation with someone, or somebody suddenly got angry, I remember the idea of, I'm not sure I want that gift. And if you're a leader, you could tell a story about just taking an extra 5 minutes to buy that chocolate brownie and that coffee from your favourite coffee shop, to communicate to your team, take a moment for yourselves, like take care of yourselves, do something nice for yourself. It doesn't have to be a big story, but the motor cortex, the sensory cortex, the olfactory, our sense of smell. If you can stimulate the emotional and movement areas of the brain and the memories, it's so sticky.
Yeah.
And
much more motivating. Because we get back to the human experience and we feel connected. We feel like, I understand what that might feel like, or I've had that experience.
Yeah.
And it's much more connecting, it's much more motivating for us.
Exactly. And there's been loads of research done on this. I mean, we're sort of like, it's something like we're 22 times more likely to remember that piece of information or something if you put a story around it. I mean, it's just such a no-brainer to put story around it. So really think colour, feeling, experience, memory, action, think story. And just a really, really quick way, I was thinking about this morning, listening to another podcast, really quick way to think about story. It's 3 acts. Set it up. Where are we? Who are we? What happens?
Yeah.
What's the moment of change? The challenge? How do you resolve it? And
what do we learn?
And what do we learn? Yeah. What's the meaning? I mean, it's so simple.
Yeah. And we have a really wonderful story.
We have an amazing story model. So if you are not using story at any point, and whether that's just a regular meeting, it doesn't have to be your big TEDx. If you do a TEDx, though, again, the stats have been done on that. The popular TEDx's are probably 90% story, with a little bit of the thread of the core message, but it's mainly stories.
And I am going to promote your TEDx here, Phil, because you use story in such a brilliant way. Not only do you tell a brilliant story in your TEDx, but you do the wonderful, wonderful thing of dividing the story up into pieces that flows, that flows right through the presentation.
That you come back
to. It's so skillful and it's so impactful. It's just brilliant.
Very nice. So story, and I think the other thing to say on this that again came from the retreat. So because we talk about story in two ways. I mean, one is that telling of stories, which you absolutely, I'm going to say must, and I don't usually use that word, but as a leader, as a business owner, tell stories about the successes that you've had, tell stories about the what you've learned from the difficulties that you've overcome, or from the failures, I do that in inverted commas, from the challenges. Tell those stories. That is what is going to inspire your people and inspire your customers, and also on posts or online. And of course, it's also about the story that you tell yourself.
Yes.
Because the other thing on the silent retreat, of course, are all the stories that I had in my head.
Which are the only stories that you have apart from the end of the day, 45 minutes.
Exactly. So what story have you got going on in your head? What's the story of you? And we talk about personal profile. We're just finishing off our personal profile on demand series, so that's going to be available. It's going to be an absolute corker. It's got so much content in there around how you can really shape and create your own personal reputation and brand. And so it's also about the story of you, and of course that super segue links back to intention.
Totally.
That everything that you intend, everything you do from there, you are a living and breathing story. And if you think that people don't talk about you, boy,
you are wrong.
You are wrong.
And the thing I would say about that is, if we park intention for 1 minute, I think the inner story that we have about ourselves, about our experience, about what we experience about other people, I think we can feel, sometimes we don't think about it too much, we can feel like it's one-dimensional. There just is a narrative. That's what happened. That's how I feel. That's the truth. Not really realising, but that behind that story is a whole set of beliefs and a whole set of intentions that have led to that story. And actually, if you have a different belief, you have different intentions, you would end up with a very different story about yourself and about other people. So there isn't a fixed story about who you are and how you experience things. We are creating it, even if it doesn't feel like we are.
Absolutely, in every single moment, and absolutely. So a really nice way to think about story. You can think about this as you're going into your next meeting. You can think about story with 4 W's. Who's it about? What do they want? What's in the way? What's the win? So who are the protagonists of the story? That might be you, your team. It might be the customers. Or it might be a completely other story. It might just be a story about somebody. What do they want? The goal is, the dream is, what we're going for, the deal that we want, the target that we want. What's in the way? It got really challenging when it was tough because we had no budget.
There's a competitor who's coming
our way, whatever it is. What's in the way? And then what's the win? We pulled together. We thought outside the box. We did something we've never done before. We turned it on its head. So what's the win? And we made it. And X, Y, and Z. So who's the story about? What do you want? What's in the way, and what's the win? So there you go. Really quick way to think about story.
And it doesn't have to be big. Tiny stories are brilliant.
Tiny stories, exactly. Which actually makes it more relatable, because how many of us are going to go on the pommel horse? I got it back in. How many of us are going to win gold on the pommel horse?
I don't know, but we're going to go and watch Max Whitlock now.
We are. But we can all eat a brownie and drink a coffee, which we might do while we're watching Matt Whitlock win a gold medal.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 4D Human Being podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Do take on board some of the insights, tools and tips, because every time that you try something new to get back to choice, you are making a vote for the you that you want to become. And I love that phrase, Pen.
I do too. And please do share this episode with somebody that you know would really benefit from the lessons and learnings we've been chatting about today.
And of course, if you're interested in more from 4D Human Being, do get in touch. We run workshops, trainings, online, in person, conference events and keynotes. We've got the 4D On Demand platform for your whole organisation. And we do have a free Essentials membership where anybody can sign up for absolutely free to access some of our insights, tools and tips. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to hear more. We cannot wait to hear from you and to carry on the conversation.